All right, well, today we're going to talk about two more reformational colonies. One really didn't come directly out of the reformational thought. In fact, it came out of Roman Catholic thought, but it really was modeled after a lot of these reformational colonies. And we'll start there. That was the colony of Maryland. Maryland was actually founded by Lord Baltimore, who was a Roman Catholic. And what Lord Baltimore wanted was he actually wanted a place of freedom specifically for Catholics, but also for the Jews in the New World. What's interesting is that over time, a lot of these reformational colonies became known as places of freedom or places of great diversity, probably with the exception of Massachusetts. Massachusetts was kind of closed, but we'll take a look at that later when we talk about the Puritans. But even so, Maryland was founded for that reason. In fact, the name Maryland comes from the wife of Charles. Her name was Mary. And Baltimore, of course, named the capital city, or what was become the major city, that is. Annapolis is the capital city, but he named Baltimore after his own family name of Baltimore as well. Now, the second colony that we'll take a look at is a little more interesting, and that's the colony of Georgia. Now, you might just know of Georgia as the place that you pass through to get to Disney World. There's actually a little more to Georgia than just that, as well as the heat that's down there also. But Georgia, which was named after King George, was actually founded by a man named James Oglethorpe. Now, James Oglethorpe was an older gentleman. He was wealthy. He had fortune. He didn't have to work for a living. He had a beautiful wife. He essentially was set. He really didn't have anything that he needed. But whenever James Oglethorpe would go through places like London, he would pass by a prison that held certain types of prisoners. In fact, in this one prison that he passed by, it held entirely debtors. These were people who owed money to someone and could not afford to pay that money back. And the way it worked in this time was if that happened to you, you couldn't declare bankruptcy. You couldn't just say, give me more time. If you had exhausted the time that had been given to you, the person you owed money to could have you put in jail. Of course, once you're in jail, you really have no way of making money or being able to pay this person off, so debtor's prison just has more people added into it. And because typically the people that went in there were husbands and fathers, their family had no place to go, so the family often came and joined them in the prison cell so they could all be together and eat the food of the prison because they had nothing else to eat. And so Oglethorpe saw this whole situation as dire. He saw it also as a little ridiculous, but he knew that it needed an actual solution. And so he got laws passed to free all the debtors. Just one problem. They're debtors. They're people who typically weren't very good with money. They're people who typically didn't save their money. And so he needed a way that they could actually work, a way that they could actually have something to do. And so Oglethorpe came up with a brilliant plan, and he took it to King George. He asked King George to grant him a charter to found a new colony, which of course would be named after him, and this colony would be for debtors. King George granted the request, and 30 families who had just been released from debtor's prison went with Oglethorpe to this new colony of Georgia, and they founded the city of Savannah, one of the great old cities of the South, still a beautiful place to visit. And there in Savannah, some of Oglethorpe's contemporaries say that all the people, they worked with a will. There were no idlers, there were no lazy people. Even the children, even the boys and the girls helped out. As a result, Georgia grew into a prosperous colony early on. It became a place that was a safe haven for all the persecuted peoples of the world, people like the Protestants, people like Catholics in certain countries, and people like the Jews. Oglethorpe knew that the colony's success in many ways was tied to hard work, to actually having what they call a Protestant work ethic, also tied to the Reformation. But he understood that one of the ways to protect that was to banish slavery. He knew that if slavery ever came to Georgia, that it would come out of the people's laziness. And so he passed laws as the governor of Georgia to banish slavery. And for 11 years, he was an excellent governor. He defended the people against attacks by the Spanish. But then there was a turn on Oglethorpe. As more and more people came to Georgia, attracted to all the things that the people had built by the sweat of their hard work, Oglethorpe got driven out of office and sent back to England. Now, it's not the end of Oglethorpe. It's the end of him in Georgia, but Oglethorpe was an interesting character. Oglethorpe was always a champion of things like hard work and freedom, which is why in the year 1776, when he was an old man, he actually told the British Parliament, because he was living in England once again, he told them that they should support the colonies in their desires to see all of their wrongs righted. But of course, he was ignored, like so many other wise men of the day. Oglethorpe himself, though, would live to be a happy old man. He lived at the age of 96 and saw his great-grandchildren. Now, all of these things we mentioned today, and I want you to think about this, what we've talked about this week with these reformational colonies. What I want you to realize is that these colonies form the backbone of the American culture that was there in 1776 when we did declare independence. These colonies had the whole idea that life is precious. It has to be protected. They had the whole notion that liberty is something that God gives us. We have the right to actually make decisions and to govern ourselves according to His Word. These people of these reformational colonies understood the whole value of property, that when a man produces something, when he makes something with his own hands, it shows a little bit of his calling. It shows a little bit of who he actually is, and that should be protected. That's why these ideas of life, of liberty, and property, which is what they often called it in those days, not the pursuit of happiness back then, it's why those three ideas became so central in American thought and formed the America that we know today. But of course, that's a lesson for another time.